being here. I hope you had a good lunch. I know that we spent the whole morning like really diving into the curriculum and like looking at student assessments and student exemplars, and so I am asking you to have a little bit of a mindset shift right now, and we're going into this session on responding to students part 2, which is going to have a lot more like stand and deliver, like what would I do in this scenario type of things as far as student behavior, which we know is also very important to add on to your learning this morning, okay? I'm really excited to be here with y'all. I think there's a lot of new faces that I haven't facilitated to, so quick introduction. My name is Andrea Cruz. I'm an instructional coach here with PE. I will have some pictures scattered throughout so you guys can get to know me better. We're gonna go ahead and dive in. So the two things that you're gonna need right now, and I'm gonna pause here to let you guys get these materials. One is just wherever you wanna take notes. If you are taking notes on your laptop, that's fine. Otherwise, just something to write on. And then you'll also need your notes from last Friday's session on responding to students. If you have those, great. If not, that's okay too. We're gonna have some more time here to get us situated and ready. But please go ahead and take about a minute to get these two things, okay? And if you're not sure what that is, let me know as I walk around. Oh, I'm sorry, last Thursday, not Friday, I'm sorry, last Thursday. Yes, yep. And it was also wherever you scripted the proactive expectations and reinforcement, so it might just be the model lesson materials. Anywhere where you remember scripting out MVPT and like what you were gonna say, that's what we're looking for right now.
So proactive?
Yes. Taking a couple more seconds to get materials, and if not, we'll have some work time built in where you can find those things. Alright, so I can do a couple of facilitator moves. I'm gonna do a quick poll as you guys are wrapping this part up. Raise your hand if you are teaching middle school. Okay, keep your hand up for 6th grade. Okay, you can put them all down. Raise your hand for 7th grade. Okay, raise your hand for 8th grade. Okay, raise your hand if you're teaching high school. Okay, raise your hand or keep your hand up for 9th grade or 10th grade. Okay, 11th grade, 12th grade, anyone? Okay, so that gives me a good idea of who's in the room, just so I can use that to call on us. So my background is in 6th grade, that's my favorite grade. So could I get a 6th grade teacher to read the first bullet point?
Teachers will be able to review trajectory of AGT, proactive expectations, positive reinforcement, and responding to student methods.
Perfect, thank you. So the review part, it's not gonna be new information, but since we did have a long weekend away from each other, we wanna make sure that we're all on the same track with some of these things, and remembering them, so we'll just do a little bit of review to begin with. Can I get somebody who's teaching lower high school to read the second bullet point? So 9th or 10th grade.
Practice ensuring redirection sufficiency in order to ensure all students are there.
Perfect, thank you. So really getting into the practice part and really standing and delivering those. And then can I get somebody who's teaching higher high school, so 11th or 12th grade, to read the third bullet point?
Teachers will be able to receive current feedback in real time while practicing ensuring redirection.
Perfect, thank you. And so that feedback will come possibly from me or possibly from our peers when we do get into groups to do this practice, okay? So before we get started, I wanted to show you guys a couple of pictures of my students and my classrooms throughout the years. I've had a really interesting teaching experience just because I taught a normal school year maybe once, and then every other school year after that was just crazy. I taught the year after Harvey. This picture was the year after that, so probably my most normal year. And then of course COVID, so teaching through that as well. And like I said, I did teach 6th grade, so you get a lot of those really proud moments of you're watching them get promoted to high school and you're thinking about what they're gonna do after that. So it's just a really special grade for me to teach. And I hope that you're kind of having those same feelings around the grade that you're gonna be teaching. So before we get into today's session, I wanted to take a moment, just kind of think about our own why, okay? So at your tables, you're gonna turn and talk about these two questions. How might learning or practicing culture learning strategies now help us before we get into the classroom in front of students, okay? So we're gonna be standing, delivering, that might feel a little awkward, but how is that gonna be helpful? And then the second question, not the third question, is what opportunities of practice and feedback may help us grow in our skills/confidence? So what are you really needing as far as practice or feedback at this point, okay? 2 minutes to turn and talk at your tables. Not right now. Bring it back, yeah, thank you. We have a couple of people still with me, but during work time, I'll make sure you post. All right, I feel like the conversations were naturally coming to a close. I did volunteer, is it Jada? Yeah. Did volunteer Jada over here to share her response, but as she's sharing, if that resonates or if it, inspires you to share your response as well, we'll definitely do that. But Jada, go ahead.
So I said practicing it is helpful because when we actually have to do it in real time, it'll come more naturally and it won't feel forced or won't feel nervous doing it in front of the actual class.
Perfect, thank you. Anybody else want to share their response around the value and what we're going to take away from this practice opportunity?
I think it offers a unique opportunity to grow as an emerging educator, especially being observed or taking a feedback from the more experienced teachers. They can see gaps that we may not be able to see as emerging educators. I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for saying that. And I think that, yes, definitely the value of getting feedback from me or any other, I see this in the room, but also getting the feedback from each other, right? There's very rare opportunities you'll find that you get to go into another teacher's classroom and see how they do things. And, the opportunities that you do get to do that are really valuable. So definitely leaning on each other as well, like she said, to fill in the gaps. So as I was planning this and practicing this, I didn't think about this other perspective that somebody else in the room could give us. So I definitely agree with that. Thank y'all. Here we are in the culture of learning trajectory. All last week we started with our foundation of teacher presence, practice expectations, and reinforcement. But in this session, we're starting to think about what if things don't go the way we planned, right? What if there's student misbehaviors? What if some other scenarios happen? And that's where those redirections are gonna come in, and that's what we're gonna be practicing delivering today, okay? Here is our agenda. Again, we're gonna start by reviewing some information that we got last week, just so we're all on the same page. And then lots of practice rounds in triads and in table groups, and then we'll have some processing to close out, okay? This is a reminder from last week's session. Could I get a volunteer who teaches 7th grade to read this book, or this reminder?
Reminder.
No, go ahead.
Okay, reminder, you are the GPS of your classroom. Reroute students when they get off track.
Perfect, thank you. So the idea of redirections being you have the destination in mind, you know what your proactive expectations were, what you wanted students to do, and if they get off track from that, we are the GPS that provides them the alternate route to still get there, okay? Another reminder about redirections, and you can find these on your notes as well. If you don't have your notes and there's something that you want to jot down, please feel free. But remember that redirections are only used after we've done these things, okay? After we've given a clear attention getting technique, after we've set practice expectations, and after we've used reinforcements, okay? And the big idea behind that is that we can't ask students to redirect to something that we never told them to do in the first place, right? We wanna make sure we're giving them that clear path to success and to what the behavior that we want them to do, okay? Here's a reminder of our COL trajectory, because we learned a lot of these things last week, and some of them might be getting a little jumbled in our head. So for this activity, I would like you to turn and talk at your tables. What do we remember about attention-getting techniques? What do we remember about MVPT, reinforcements, and this idea of redirecting students? So for each, describe what it is, provide an example, and actions or criteria for success that we pair with it, okay? You could take turns so that you don't have to do every single one. Decide that with your groups, okay? Turn and talk, 2 minutes.
And then we were given directions.
Yeah.
Redirections,
Is that your attention-getting technique? You know, prepubescent bodies. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and bring this back forward. Thank you guys for doing that. I heard a lot of good conversation about like examples and things that we've seen done effectively, but let's go ahead and form this knowledge all together. So AGT, who can tell me what it is and some criteria for that? And I'm just gonna open it up again so we can make this knowledge together. What is an AGT? Yes.
Attention getting technique,
Yes.
so that could look like, class bias, group yes, it's a way to bring the focus back to the teacher.
Yes.
To regain control of class.
Yeah, and the most important thing about AGT, and I think I heard somebody say it over there, maybe it was over there, is that we have to wait for
Yeah.
scanning and waiting for 100%. That's definitely the other important thing about it, right? So yes, you say the class, yes, but really using that time to wait and make sure that everybody's with you before you move on. Very good. And I heard a lot of creative ones, like the raindrop, drop top, like all the like fun creativity that we can use with these. So definitely love to see that. MVPT, what does that stand for?
Movement, voices, participation, and time.
Movement, voice, participation, time. Yes, perfect. And making sure that anytime we're giving kids expectations, those 4 aspects are very clear to them. And then let's talk about reinforcements. What is a reinforcement? Yes.
Just like thanking the student for getting back on track or for doing this supposed to be doing.
Yes.
So that they can get this into other students as well.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, it's all about that positive narration, right? Like walking around, making sure you see somebody doing the correct expectations, naming that out loud so that it, like she said, can bring other kids back and bring them to the expectations as well. And then reinforcements, did we get to talk about reinforcements? Yes.
I was just gonna say what I was telling them, because it's not always, so if I gave like a reinforcement to Jada, but I'm trying to get Corey on task,
sometimes reinforcements aren't always for the students we're naming, so like, I'm noticing you're doing your work, you're working on X, Y, and Z, but daily, instead of me singling out for it, I'm just doing like a general,
Yeah.
thing, so it's not always for like, the one specific thing.
Yeah, definitely not always to single them out, right? And there is times where we might do that, and we'll get into that on the next couple of slides of like when to use certain types of redirections, but I agree. That is kind of the last piece of the puzzle, right? Because we do wanna lean on the positive reinforcement, and we do wanna lean on, let me use Jada's behavior as an example for everybody else. And if that doesn't work, then our last resort would be that redirection. So thank you for saying that. We're gonna go ahead and push forward to that redirection review, because that's what I was referring to. We went through all of this information last week. You should have this on your notes in front of you. If for some reason you don't, or there's just something you wanna jot down to remember for yourself, you can do that at this time, okay? So when we're giving those redirections, the first thing we wanna do is notice that misbehavior, right? And I know that that might sound easy, but you really have to be scanning the room and really have to be aware of what's going on, so that when there's a student not meeting expectations, you notice it, right? And that is the first step here. The next step is to positively frame it, and so we need to make sure we're telling students what they should be doing instead of what they shouldn't be doing. So instead of saying, you know, Taylor, stop talking, you would say, Taylor, we're at voice level 0 right now. Sorry, Taylor. The next one is specific. Naming the specific task or behavior they should be doing, rooted in your proactive expectations. That part is important just because, again, you wanna make sure you gave them the expectation and try to get them back to it. The next thing is quick, avoiding any power struggles or extended conversations. You'll do that by making it as little words as possible, so that there's no room for negotiation, especially for a secondary teacher, especially for middle school, you don't wanna leave it open. And finally, issue with a strong teacher presence, having that confident tone, warm and demanding. Any questions or comments about this before I move forward? Okay, and again, this is all from last week. So last week, we also learned about the types of redirections, right? So like we were saying earlier, is there ever a time where we wanna use a student's name specifically? Yes, that would be called a private redirection, okay? But that's not the only time. You can also give a whole group redirection, so say, hey, I notice a lot of us are not on task right now, let's all make sure we have our guided notes in front of us, right? You could also do a public singular redirection. If you're in the middle of something and you see somebody on the other side of the room doing something, right, that would be a singular redirection. And then private is that one-on-one conversation. Any questions about this? And I will say what I said to my group last week, and I don't think a lot of us were in my group last week, is that private redirections might be something that we naturally tend towards, right? We wanna have that one-on-one conversation. We don't wanna call somebody out in front of the whole group, but there is gonna be times where we have to do that. All right, now we're gonna get into practice time. So at this point is where you're gonna wanna have your planning materials out. And last week you should have planned and scripted your proactive expectations with reinforcement directly onto the lesson materials, okay? That's hopefully what you have in front of you right now. What this 10 minutes is gonna be for is if you don't have those materials, you can start to do that now, and I can support with that. If you already have what you scripted last week, you can look at it with a fresh set of eyes, it's a new week, and make sure that all of those proactive expectations and reinforcements meet the criteria here, okay? And just a reminder, when we had this work time last week, you were looking at parts of the lesson that there was a transition time that would be sticky, that we wanna make sure students had expectations for, right? So for example, getting out of the new now into the next task, or going from one activity to another with a different voice level, right? So that's what we're doing for these 10 minutes. Any questions here? Okay, and again, if support is needed, I'll be walking around during these 10 minutes, okay? All right, y'all want to start? And again, just look in. First thing, thank you guys for taking the time to do that. I know that there's a lot of papers from last week, so thank you guys for finding those materials. I'm sorry if I was a little unclear on where to find it. the other thing I wanna say is thank you for really digging into this, because having this foundation of your strong practice expectations with reinforcement is gonna be really important in just a moment, where we dive into those scenarios where there's certain misbehaviors, and if we're even more strong in those expectations that we gave, when those misbehaviors come up, it's gonna be less of a surprise, right? You're gonna be really prepared, because you set those strong expectations. So at this point, before we get into those scenarios with misbehaviors, I do wanna give us an opportunity to stand up with a new partner and deliver these, proactive expectations. This will be very quick. So it's just 6 minutes, 3 minutes for partner A, 3 minutes for partner B. In those pairs, you're gonna deliver your scripted ABT expectations and reinforcements. You are going to, as a partner, you're gonna use what's on the screen to go ahead and give your partner that feedback, okay? And effective feedback can look like this. You can tell your partner, you know, it was effective when you did this. Or if it's adjusting feedback, you can tell your partner to consider something else, okay? So I'll give you guys a moment to familiarize yourself with the CFS that you're gonna use to give feedback to your partner. And I know that some of these things are hard to do, like, you know, harnessing your authoritative teacher presence. I know we're not in the classroom with kids, but we're doing our best to emulate that, okay? So at this time, go ahead and stand up, and I would encourage you to find a partner that's like at completely opposite table from you. And once you have found your partner, both of you can give me a thumbs up. Wait, Alright, let me see if there's an even number, I think, we can try it, yeah.
Oh, I don't have.
Oh, actually, yes, okay.
Okay, everybody?
Oh, you two, and then y'all can stay in here, that's fine. Okay, so, in your groups, raise your hand, or quickly talk to each other, who's gonna go first? Alright, hands up if you are going first. All my folks who are going first, okay, put them down, hands up if you're going second. Okay, so since we know who's going first is going second, I'm gonna go ahead and just set the full 6 minutes. Make sure each partner has about 3 minutes, make sure you deliver it, give that feedback. Are you ready to go?
Okay, everybody, eyes on me, voices off in 3, 2, 1.
Oh, no.
I said eyes on me, voices off in
Oh, I
3, 2,
said the same.
1. Excellent job, Nadia. I didn't know the record table voices are off. I saw over here we have our laptops plugged. They're coming on. And we're gonna start in 3, 2, 1. This time we have our controls in front. Sorry, I told him to stop. I don't know. Okay, because I'm like them. Yeah. Already I thought the voices up in 3, 2, 1. At this time we are silent. And you're going to do this tutor model. You'll watch what I do, and you guys will copy down whatever I do. We are listening to Nancy.
You know, thinking about any lesson given and where there's one
Karen, they keep this table over here. That's an excellent job. I've been on task. I've been finishing work letters for that. Medication goes on next person over here. They used to be finding your seat. Presentations. That table over
Oh, yeah, I think pretty much the same for myself. I think we're in the same.
Have any questions, raise your hand. And see.
Alright, if you and your partner are done, you can find your seat just because I didn't set a timer, so I don't know how long we have. And when you and your partner / partners are done, you can find your seats just so I know who's done and who's still practicing. Sorry, no, you're fine. Did y'all both finish? Alright, so before we move into the next portion, does anybody want to share like a takeaway from that experience? Like what was easy, what was challenging, you know, how, just in general, how was that feeling? Yes, over here,
I
Krista.
think it was challenging actually having to like write stuff out, because I'm used to like saying it and doing it already, but having to stop and go back and write stuff down was kind of throwing me off at first, because I'm just like doing it in the moment, doing it in the moment. So having to think about it just kind of threw me off a little bit.
Okay, and do you feel like the act of going in and writing it down, like did it kind of help when you were delivering it to make sure you hit all the points, or do you feel more confident doing it like off the top?
Sometimes off the top of my head, but it's good to like go back and make sure you meet like certain like points and standards when you are delivering. So when I do this, you know, this school year, I know what to like pinpoint and stuff.
Yeah, for sure, thank you, and I did tell my group this last week, so I'll say this again, that like, I know that active scripting, it can feel like a lot, especially because it's just for one transition, you're gonna have like 10 transitions in a lesson if you teach for an hour and a half, right? And so, yes, we're taking a lot of time to script this particular one, but yes, eventually it will feel very natural, and you won't have to script anything out because you're already so used to giving those expectations in that structure, so, yes, that is what we're moving towards, yes.
The reinforcements, I think that's kind of hard, cause you have to out before that minute, so it's kind of like, she's like, oh, thank you, Katie, for doing this, oh, thank you, such and such for doing it, and you're trying to push them 3 out very fast.
Yeah.
That's the only time that it get difficult, cause it's kind of like, I don't, is it 3 to 5 in 1 minute?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that's hard.
It is, and especially to keep it specific, right? It's easy to walk around and say like,
Good
oh,
job.
good job, but if you wanna be specific about it, I agree that that part's hard. And it'll just come with practice, and you'll also have a full room of students, you're not just like trying to make up names or anything like that. So yeah, definitely practicing that. Any other reflections? Yes.
I didn't know how hard, like, I always thought I was somebody that could work on the fly.
Mhm.
Like, I never scripted, oh my gosh. I think what saved me, I think a lot of us was remembering what the MBTT stood for.
Mhm.
Because then I can reference it, like, oh shoot, did I do the P, did I do the B?
Mhm.
But other than that, like, I feel like this is something I'm gonna have to practice.
Yeah, I'm glad that it was helpful to do that review, and yes, this is definitely something that we recognize has to be practiced for it to come more naturally. So that's what we're here for, so I'm really glad to hear that. The next part we're gonna get into, again, we set that strong foundation, but what do we do when there's misbehaviors, right? That's the next part that we're gonna get into, issuing redirections. And to do that, we're gonna be in triads for this one. What I'm gonna put on the screen right now is the protocol that we're gonna follow. I'm gonna give like an example protocol, and then there's gonna be 3 scenarios for your triad, okay? So I'm gonna give you some scenarios. Your first step is gonna be to read the scenario and decide in your triad, one person will be the teacher, one person will be the misbehaving student, and the other person will just be a regular behaving student giving feedback, okay? As the teacher, if it's your scenario that you're giving, you're gonna take some time, and it's not gonna be, you know, completely off the bat. You're gonna have some time to think through which type of redirection makes sense for this scenario, right? So would it be more effective to talk whole group because it's something that, you know, multiple students are doing? Is it gonna be better to be singular because only one student's doing it? Or is this a one-on-one conversation, right? So you're gonna have a moment to decide after you read the scenario, which one fits best, okay? Afterwards, you're not gonna do it off the bat, you're gonna have 2 minutes to script in what that redirection would be, okay? Then, you're gonna stand and deliver that. You're gonna deliver the same thing you just did, okay? Your scripted AGT, your proactive expectations, but the only difference is that student is gonna do that misbehavior, or whatever the misbehavior is, okay? You are gonna have some practice in delivering that reinforcement, and students, don't get too spicy, and go back to the directions, once they give the redirection. When the scene is over, the third person in your triad is gonna give the feedback from the CFS here. I went through that kind of fast, so I'll leave it up there for a second. Any questions about this protocol? Okay, and in just a moment, like I said, I'm gonna give a bit of an example. So here is our example. I'm gonna model this one. So scenario, can I get somebody who is teaching 8th grade to read this scenario out loud for us?
While transitioning from talking about the do now and partners to overviewing the key points, you hear someone humming, but you don't know who.
Thank you. So if I'm the teacher and I'm about to deliver this, I'm thinking, if I hear somebody humming but I don't know who, should I give a public whole group redirection, a public singular redirection, or a private singular redirection? Do we know which type would be most effective here? Whole group, right, because you don't want to single out a kid if you don't know exactly who it is, right? So then I would take 2 minutes to script out, okay, if somebody's gonna be humming, what am I gonna say to the group to redirect that humming and get kids back on track? I'm gonna stand and deliver my AGT, proactive expectations, and a student will misbehave, so do that humming, right? I would reinforce them, and then another person would give me feedback on that reinforcement, okay? Does that make a little bit more sense now that I laid it out like that? Okay. So I'm gonna give you a moment to get into triads, I think, let me look around for a moment. 1, 2, I'll be at the third over here. Okay, I think we have enough for triads, so go ahead and get, if you're a little spaced out, go ahead and get with 2 other people around you. Alright, so for this, I don't want to necessarily give us a preview of the scenario, so for now we can just decide who's going to be the teacher first, who's going to be the teacher second, and who's going to be the teacher last. So go ahead and take a moment to decide that. Alright, thumbs up if we know who's going to go first. Okay, so if you are going to be the teacher first, here is your scenario.
Oh, wait. I thought we were going home.
I know, that one was an example.
Go back.
Alright, so at this time, give the teacher 2 minutes to prepare for this. While you're doing that, decide who's gonna be the misbehaving student and who's gonna give the feedback, okay? I'll give y'all 2 minutes to practice. You're not hungry.
No, I don't want to go. You have about a minute left if you need to jot
I know you're doing something when I'm at work. I'm like,
Alright, if you're the teacher first, sometimes if you're ready. Okay. I'll set the timer for 3 minutes. Remember, giving all of your, proactive expectations, reinforcements, and redirections, and then feedback as well. So hopefully that will last 3 minutes. If not, we can revisit, but 3 minutes starting now. Yes. So teacher, standing, and delivering.
so you just still reading for 1 year. Are we, okay. So you're good. Oh, my bad. Okay. No, you're for a question. So, you know, once we read that, that's what you're telling her.
Practice same thing you read before, so practice.
I would swallow this.
And then, yes, we said your redirection.
Raise up. Thank you guys for coming back to help your when I say go, we'll put in the next 2 minutes to work with our elbow partners to discuss the interpretation. Our voices should be at a level 1. You want to go. Thank you, Jose, for working with it on you. Elizabeth, remember we should be discussing our answers with our elbow partner. Across the table. Elizabeth, thank you for being honest with your partner. I like how the back table is discussing our
Thank you for.
No, I got
somebody else. I teach high school, so I'm used to the fact that
now that our voice was figured out.
And I'm not gonna go. Because I do have to. Oh, baby. I'm just told me. No, but what's your
And what about Look, I ain't never read that before. Oh, we have good feedback.
Oh, I just gave it
Alright, thumbs up if your group finished and gave the feedback. Okay, if not, it's okay. I'm just gonna say one thing about this one. Of course, kind of the correct redirection to give was the public singular, right? Just because it was only Lisbeth that was doing the misbehavior, right? Or it could have been a one-on-one as well. Any takeaways from that experience before we move into the next one? Yes?
learn to ignore.
What do you mean?
Like, even if they don't follow what you said, like, just ignore them, their hands still up.
As far as the.
Oh, well, she.
So
They don't have multiple misbehavior.
Yeah, I was constantly going like, teacher, and then she redirected me a couple of times. She's like, listen. Okay, and I'm like, I don't understand. I'm like, listen. So I think that was like, it was hard.
That was my learn too.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And it definitely, even though it's not necessarily up here, like, getting to the root of like, why is that misbehavior happening? And if it's like one of those ones that like, I just want the teacher to pay attention to me and like not validating that, I think that would be a good reason to do that. So thank you. Talk, if you haven't for just a second, which person is gonna do scenario 2? Or which person's gonna teach during scenario 2? here is your scenario. As you transition from the teacher model to practice, you hear some off-task conversations that you don't know from Zoom. Alright, I'll start the timer for 2 minutes to prep for this one.
Predict this, but with like the redirections. I think that it's difficult for me is like as they're acting out, but the teacher is not redirecting. Because then I have to be the bad guy that's redirected. And I feel like it was difficult last year, but I thought like this is or I feel like the teacher got but here the gender and addressing that. So it's kind of like he's like you so that was like definitely difficult where I definitely got some pushback on was kind of like
Alright, thumbs up if you're ready. You're the teacher for the next round and you're ready to stand up and deliver. Okay, I'm gonna honor the two. I didn't really do this last time, so apologies, but the full 3 minutes to stand and deliver and give the feedback. 3 minutes for the next teacher, starting now.
Wait. Yeah. Transition. Okay, so now we did. Alright guys, we're gonna remember that we're working silently out here. I'm not gonna listen to it. I didn't prepare for that. We don't know what to say. That's what this, I was saying. I just went around. They couldn't hear me. I was like, and then I said, okay, we're remembering now. That's my friend. That is public. Maybe it was immediate.
Okay. But that's still kind of sitting you. I Okay, we have already worked some spreadsheets. And I heard some voices. I don't want you over here because that's the way y'all are. I know what you're hearing. I hear some voices. Can we talk? That's what they gonna do though. That's what they gonna We have to work just like this the rest of the class. Yeah. I'm gonna go with the book. The book that was so sure to talk over me while I was doing I like this. I like this. I like this. I'm gonna take a recess now. Let me know because I'm gonna take it. Let me have a recess. How are you? when I say go, you will have 5 minutes to work on questions 2 and 4.
No, keep going.
Not to miss you.
Oh, okay. So when I say go, you will have 5 minutes to work on questions 2 and 4. I'll wait, I get to talk. Will anybody have any questions? When I say go, you will have 5 minutes to work on questions 2 and 4 for what's the right zero independently. And when you're done, signify you're done, you put your paper up. All of them, you know, you say my favorite.
I would say the question of like, does anybody have any questions? I get why you're trying to like figure out why they're talking. But I think that like that piece, I wouldn't say whole group just because it would open up like she did like, can we talk right now? Is like you can come back and say like, okay, I noticed while we're talking like, do you have questions about the directions? If you want to, you can follow up with them if that was your object. Yeah, but thank you for standing up and doing it. Alright, sorry. Thumbs up if your group was able to finish. Okay, so one thing, and this was my bad for not naming it. When you're getting that feedback, during the 3 minutes, definitely don't be afraid to like stand up and try it again, implementing that feedback. So I want to give a shout out over here. This group was really good at like giving each other feedback, but then encouraging each other to like, hey, now that you know that, try it again and let's see what that sounds like and feels like. So I would definitely encourage that. There's only one more scenario left for the final person who is not presented yet. So here's that. After giving directions, this is a common one, so I definitely want to see how we're approaching this one. After giving directions for an independent activity, you begin circulating and you see a student who looks upset and puts their head down. Okay? So if you're teaching for this one, I'll give you 2 minutes to prep and then I'll let you know when it's time to deliver.
He said, I'm not doing it.
If you're teaching this final round, thumbs up if you're ready. Okay. Can't wait to see it. Final round, 3 minutes. I'm gonna circulate around.
You guys remember that we are reading independently on the back of our notebooks, and we are trying to avoid zero.
They look.
Miss May, I'm ready.
I'm not even trying to be funny.
That's not it.
You know how they go to that game when other people like to.
No, I guess she changed her intention. I'm not saying right.
It's good, I think it's good.
Okay, so I want to thank y'all for working independently together and quietly on our pretest. So now what we're gonna do is, sorry. Now what we're gonna do, when I say go, we're gonna find the shoulder partner to the right, left of you. And then for 3 minutes at a voice level 1, you're going to discuss what was the hardest question on the pretest. Any questions? Go.
James, are you okay?
Okay, we know all this out there.
I don't know where, like she's singular, of course. Is that what they're going back and
It would be nice to get on their level and like and yes, like if you want to talk about it, giving that space, but also like the expectations that you know. And if you don't talk, like your partner want to maybe talk, they're like giving some sort of rationale and then saying like, hey, but if you're still, I didn't hear what you said, so if it was like I'm feeling tired.
I'm sorry, I'm having a good day.
Okay, so you can say something like, I can talk to you about that later, but let's try to do the activity right now. Yeah, that's what I mean. You want to try it again? Okay.
Okay, guys, I want to thank you for working quietly and independently on the pretest. Now, when I say go, you're going to get to the partner with the left of you, and at a voice level 1, for 3 minutes, you're going to discuss what was the hardest question on the pretest. There you go.
Okay, when we get done with this, I can take you out in the hallway and we can discuss that, but for right now, do you mind helping Corey with the assignment? Okay, thank you. Please.
I know. All right, let's go ahead and bring it back together. So I definitely want to discuss this one just because, you know, I discussed earlier that the one-on-one redirection might come a little bit more naturally to us, but as we walk around, I feel like that one's kind of the most challenging. So let's discuss this one in particular. What was something that was a little bit challenging about this? What's some feedback that you got that was helpful? Like, tell me about this one. Go ahead.
So like, immediately in my mind, like, I kind of was like, oh, well, like, I would talk to the student and like see what was like going on. But I kind of like the way that you gave us like a little guidance over here. You were saying that like, yes, we can like have that conversation with the student, but in that moment, we should like, you know, redirect them and kind of encourage them like, hey, well, could you still work with your partner, and then like, I could talk to you about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for naming that, Hobart. But yeah, that's just what I noticed over there. But you know, finding the space to do both, right? Like following up with that student, having that conversation, having that closure, and your expectations are your expectations, right? She had a really good question about like, let's talk about what was the hardest question on your pretest, and like, you want kids to be able to discuss that. So giving them that rationale of like, well, if you don't discuss this, like your partner's not gonna have anybody to talk with, and like giving that rationale so that they feel included, and even if they're having a bad day or whatever else is going on, like they can put that to the side for a moment to be engaged with the activity. But still, again, building those relationships, right, and making sure that you follow through with checking in with them. Yes.
What I love that Krista did, I need to like put her through it over here. She never let Taylor being on test take her away from the whole group, the whole class. So it was like, while she noticed Taylor's, you know, her mannerisms and, you know, her being on test or her down, she still got through presenting to the class, and then it was like she went over proximity. She did a good job of like getting down flow, not in an intimidating way, but like, I'm here. So like, she encouraged her to get the work done, and then it was like, okay, don't get taught.
Yes, thank you, good job, and I think that. Good job, I'm really happy to hear that. And yes, that is part of the criteria for a private singular redirection, right? Like, don't try to have that conversation while all kids are like trying to see what's going on, right? Like, finish your directions, give them something to be doing so that they're distracted, and then you can have that conversation. So good job following the criteria, that's awesome. Any other shout outs that we wanna give to our groups, or any other takeaways here? Yes?
Yeah, I wanna piggyback off what you said with the singular, because it's like hard, kids are like nosy, and I know when I was a kid, when people were talking to somebody, I was like listening. So it's kind of like, you have to really, and when you stop the whole lesson and be like, Jada, you're not doing what I'm still telling you to do, it's kind of like everybody's like, ooh, Jada, you know what I mean? Or like if somebody's having a bad day, so I like that you, cause I was like, oh, hey Jada, and like Corey was able to hear, Katie then was able to hear, when you was like, no, go get to their level, kind of whisper it to them. I guess I never think of it, because I didn't want all the way there to do that.
That was really good, thank you. Awesome, great takeaways. So we're still gonna have some opportunities here for practice, and here's how this next one's gonna be a little bit different. So as you guys saw with this one, you knew the scenario beforehand, right? And you had a little bit of time to prep that, which we did want you guys to have that because it can be scary to just like jump right in. But at the same time, when you are in the classroom in the fall, there's gonna be misbehaviors that happen that you're not prepared for. And I think I even heard one group saying, oh, I wasn't prepared for that. So we wanna get a little bit of practice in that spontaneous experience of giving that redirection when you don't know about it beforehand, okay? So that's gonna be this next one, and I'm gonna go ahead and put a couple of these up to let you guys read them, and I have the scenario cards in the back that I have to get. So go ahead and take a moment to read the goal of this next practice round and the format while I get those materials. As you guys just read, the goal behind this is that we still want to do that mental work of deciding, okay, if this scenario is happening, what kind of redirection would be most appropriate here, but again, without knowing what's coming, okay? So what's gonna happen is I have these scenario cards. The misbehaving student is gonna be the one this time who's gonna read that scenario, and then, internalize it and emulate it, while the teacher is giving their proactive expectations, not knowing what they just read about, okay? And all other teachers are gonna be role-playing and meeting the stated expectations, okay? After reinforcement, again, giving that misbehavior, if you're the person who's giving it for that round, and the table is gonna provide feedback. So another change for this round is that we're gonna do it in a little bit of bigger groups, just because again, we wanna, duplicate that classroom experience, okay? As you're doing this, we're having the same look for us here. So we still want to be using those attention getters, and I did see a lot of us doing that effectively during this practice. Delivering those proactive expectations, giving those reinforcements, and then, of course, that criteria about you have to notice the misbehavior, you have to notice the misbehavior. And I have been in some practice scenarios here where the person's giving the misbehavior, but the teacher didn't even realize it. So definitely make sure that you're aware of what's going on so that you see that misbehavior, okay? Deciding in the moment what type of redirection would fit here, and delivering it with those criteria, okay? Let me look at the time here. So we're gonna have about 12 minutes to do this. So I'm gonna put you guys in, I'll come around and put you in groups, and I'll pass up the backs to each group. Any questions about the directions before I pass out the materials? So let's do